CNN is learning that Trump's own advisors were caught off guard when they saw his announcement that the United States would once again test nuclear weapons, something that has not been done in decades. And Trump himself, after saying this, refused to provide any details.
Any details around the testing, sir? Like where, when?
It'll be announced. You know, we have test sites. It'll be announced.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty vague. We have test sites. I mean, we're talking about testing nuclear weapons. Trump said that he, to use his words, instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis with China and Russia. That process will begin immediately. Now, something is really, really off about this, okay? Because just on a very simple and basic fact, China and Russia have not conducted a nuclear weapons test anyone knows of since the 1990s. And even the person that Trump has nominated to oversee America's nuclear arsenal is suggesting that he is not sure what Trump exactly meant.
I wouldn't presume that the president's words meant nuclear testing.
Which is, of course, confusing because that is what Trump said, that he has instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons. Okay, Evelyn Farkas is out front now, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense in the Obama administration, and retired Army Major General Randy Manner. And I appreciate both of you very much. General Manner, obviously understanding this is crucial for all Americans and for anyone who lives on this planet. You oversaw America's policies for inspecting the nuclear weapons arsenal, for safeguarding the nuclear weapons arsenal. When you saw what Trump said and what's now happening afterwards with the confusion and with his commentary on details of we have test sites, it will be announced, what do you hear?
I want to give a little bit larger perspective on the fact that there is no money for this congressionally approved whatsoever. I was at Fort Belvoir Medical Hospital this morning for an appointment, and I was astounded by, because of the furloughed doctors, nurses, and staff, how many dozens of young military soldiers and airmen and their families, and quite frankly, babies and small children who are waiting to see doctors because of the government shutdown. And here he is announcing a testing program that could potentially cost hundreds of millions of dollars. I have been on the ground at those Nevada test sites from those many decades ago. And by the way, the Department of Energy is responsible for testing nuclear weapons, not the Department of Defense. So unfortunately, the president doesn't understand how the process works. Because there's no facilities. There's no testing equipment. There's no expertise. There are no people. This will cost hundreds of millions of dollars and quite frankly, years to be able to do it. It's not just like, well, let's go ahead and set off a nuke. That is not how this works. And the American people have to understand and have full confidence that our nuclear weapons are safe and that they will operate as needed when they are needed. So this is just a ruse by the president.
Evelyn, they also should have full confidence that the Commander-in-Chief of the United States, who is in control of the nuclear arsenal, understands it fully and all the details about what it is, who controls it, who tests it, all of those things, which it appears there is a lack of clarity on, given that Trump's own team seems to be confused about what exactly he meant there, too.
Yeah, Aaron, I think you just made an advertisement for the Catherine Bigelow movie House of Dynamite, because there's a nuclear scenario and a president has to make a decision. And it really does come down to the president, the way our system is built, which goes all the way back to Truman and the Second World War. He didn't want the military to decide about use of nuclear weapons, and so it's the president that decides. In this scenario, we have a president who, I think he misspoke, Aaron. I think he did not mean to say we're going to do nuclear testing. We're not testing a nuclear weapon. We can test weapons that could carry a nuclear weapon, a nuclear bomb on them. And that's fine. And that's actually what the Russians said they were doing. And I think that President Trump was responding to the Russians. And for that, I give him credit, because I think it's good to be tough with the Russians in the current context. But he was misspeaking. And, you know, there's a snowball effect potentially. It's not just that it costs money and it's unnecessary because scientifically we don't need it, but all these other countries are going to think they can do it. And that's dangerous.
And General Manner, I know you think that is extremely dangerous too, because you're pointing out that the United States has a long history, and granted, there hasn't been tests of actual nuclear weapons in decades, right? But that the United States has a complex arsenal that it knows the details of. But countries like China, for example, have not been able to do the tests that would give them knowledge of the reliability of their own arsenal.
I think it's important, again, to understand that there is no requirement, not by scientists, not by the military, not by the Department of Energy. This is something where it's not necessary. Now, I do agree that the idea of delivery systems, whether that means dropping something without the nuclear weapon or putting it on a missile to test the missile with, again, no nuclear weapon, that is different. I do not believe that's what the president was saying. I think he was actually saying to be able to explode a nuclear weapon. I disagree slightly. And I think we need to be, this is, again, whether it was misspeaking, not understanding the process, which is extremely clear that he does not, it is something we all need to be very concerned about. And hopefully this is not just a diversion from the fact that the government is shut down and impacting so many Americans in so many different ways.
What, Evelyn, could be the impact of the fact that it appears that the president is confused?
Yeah, I mean, I do have to kind of take what the general said and, correct myself a little bit, because I'm giving the president the benefit of the doubt. But it may be that he doesn't understand the implications of actually exploding a nuclear weapon and conducting a test. And so he cavalierly, says this. And if that's the case, that is serious. I am concerned that he doesn't understand these distinctions, because we need a president who does, and we need a president who doesn't say things off the cuff. I mean, he should have a talking point, and if he's not certain, I mean, we all know this, you have your
ask
notes.
somebody,
You ask someone, you look at your notes. You say,
right,
we will test nuclear-capable missiles just like Putin, whatever. But you can't talk willy-nilly about breaking a 3-decade voluntary moratorium that all the 9 nuclear weapons countries abide by. Some of them are not declared, but anyway,
right.
The big ones, Russia, us, and then China. We don't, and India, Pakistan, we don't conduct nuclear weapons tests anymore. It's a voluntary agreement, and that keeps the world safer, and it frankly, we don't spend as much money needlessly.
Lots to talk about with New York Times foreign affairs columnist Thomas Friedman. He's the author of The World is Flat 3.0, A Brief History of the 21st Century, and many other great books. So what do you think caused the president to announce that decision, and what exactly does on an equal basis mean in this context?
Well, Anderson, your guess is as good as mine, so I'll just give you my guess, which is that Vladimir Putin in the last few weeks has tested a nuclear-powered cruise missile and a nuclear-powered undersea drone. Nuclear-powered is different from nuclear warheaded, okay? And the president seemed to be reacting to that. He later clarified it wasn't directed at China. But, this is a problem you have when the president is basically his own national security advisor, secretary of state, president, spokesman for the State Department, spokesman for the NSC, and spokesman for the White House. And so you toss out something like that without any clarification, and you create a lot of doubt and a lot of anxiety.
I mean, what would be the consequences if the U.S. began testing explosive nuclear weapons again? I mean, would other major nuclear powers then resume testing as well?
Yeah, but the only one who's been testing nuclear weapons since 1996 is North Korea. Let's start there. Also, we've conducted far more nuclear tests than any other country, so we'd actually be facilitating other countries to catch up with us. I think what the president is reflecting in the sort of the signal to Putin is actually a sign of something good that President Trump has done. I think by doing the oil sanctions on Putin, he's rattled Putin. And Putin is worried that the president, now having done economic sanctions, might transfer the much coveted by Ukraine Tomahawk cruise missiles. And so I think what Putin is basically doing is saber rattling because he's worried. But I don't think we should go from there to breaking this long taboo on nuclear testing, which we don't need to do. Is very expensive. By the way, even to just organize a nuclear test, it can take up to 2 years. So, and the president said he was ordering the Pentagon to do it, and it's actually the Energy Department that actually runs nuclear tests. So there's a lot of confusion.
With regards to the trade talks between U.S. and China, do you think much of value was actually achieved? Because the president framed this whole thing as a major breakthrough.
Yeah, he said it was a 12 out of 10. I would say it was a 12 out of 10,000. All it really did was get us back to where we were in May. And Now American soybean farmers will be able to again sell their crops to China. That's a good thing. China is not going to use its talk about nuclear weapons. It started the equivalent nuclear option of basically banning or our ability to import rare earths and magnets from China, which basically are essential to all our advanced industries today. And we've agreed to reduce the tariffs on China. That was the essence of it. It's where we were in May. This whole thing has been it's just been a festival of injecting uncertainty, Anderson, into our economy.